a few months back, I was very fortunate to be invited by a colleague to go visit the very famous Avatar Mountains in Zhangjiajie, Hunan, China. This was a bit different than a typical trip that I would go on. I'm not a teacher, although I have taught English, adult English classes in the past. A friend of mine asked me if I'd be willing to go to Zhangjiajie and stay in a very rural village with some of the village people and some volunteer students who were going out there. I was going to get paid for my time. The students were going to be volunteering in kind of what you would consider like a big brother, big sister mentoring program. But they wanted a foreign white person to go with them. And they told me they'd pay me. So I was like, okay, this sounds like fun. Now I'll get into more detail a little bit later about the village, but I was told it was going to be very rural, probably no running water, no indoor toiletries. I was fine with that. No big deal. I mean, go to the bathroom in an outhouse, you would take a shower in a bucket. I was fine with that. It just sounded like a really fun trip. So I said, sure, yeah, let's do it. This will be fun. So the trip started out with me taking a ferry to Zhuhai in mainland China, where I was to meet up with these group of high school students and take a high-speed train to Hunan. When I got to the high-speed train station, I met this group of 10 high school kids. All of them spoke English to some level or another, but some of them were very shy about speaking English with me. I think they were just, they speak it in class with teachers and students, but then when they have to actually put it in practice with a foreigner, they're like, oh no, oh no. From there, we proceeded to get on the high-speed train. If you don't know anything about high-speed trains in China, they're ubiquitous, they're everywhere, they're cheap, and they're great. You can jump on one, very minimal security. You don't have to show up 2 hours early like you do for a plane. They leave directly on time. If it says it's leaving at 5:11 p.m., it will leave the station at 5:11 p.m. It does not run late. But so we get on the high-speed train, and for the first 2 or 3 hours, we're just riding through just urban sprawl. It is just city after big town after, skyscrapers, and it's just like, it doesn't end. And I'm thinking to myself, we're going 250 kilometers an hour. When do we get out of the city? But we are heading west-northwest, and we're basically following along the Pearl River Valley. And so we're basically just staying in Guangdong, which is really a very developed province. So after about 2.5, 3 hours, we finally start getting out into the countryside, and we start getting into some of the most beautiful country I've ever seen. These big, fertile green valleys, these like very turquoise blue rivers, some beautiful mountains. And this was just the beginning of the trip. So the high-speed train ride was really fun. We ended up getting out in Changsha, which is in Hunan province, and we stayed the night in Changsha. There's not much to talk about in Changsha. It's the capital city of Hunan. I didn't get a chance to really do much other than walk around outside the hotel at night, get some street food, and kind of watch the villagers dance around. So I have no real opinion on Changsha because I didn't really get much chance to see it. However, the next morning was really interesting because we went from a high-speed train to a slow local train. And the slow local train, it's like a normal train, right? Like an Amtrak or something like that. But it was quite entertaining because it's assigned seats, as it should be, but nobody really seemed to care about the assigned seating, which isn't a big deal if the train is not full. But when it's completely packed, it is ridiculous. And so some local people started arguing, and then a fight broke out between about 4 or 5 ladies. They started throwing punches. To me, I was just like, wow, this is crazy, but apparently it's pretty normal when you get out into the countryside. It's countryside people. It's the same all over the world. Same in the US, doesn't really matter. They're a little bit crazier. Anyway, on this train ride, we started to go into these karst mountains that Hunan is famous for, and it was breathtaking. Just these beautiful spires that come up out of the ground. They come straight up with these big rock formations. They look like fingers, coming straight up out of the ground. They're absolutely beautiful. These really cool rural villages that just looked absolutely beautiful from the train. I have no idea what they were actually like. We finally get to Zhangjiajie, and this is about mid-August. The weather is 38 degrees Celsius, which is, I don't know, 105, 110 degrees Fahrenheit. It's hot. From the train station, we end up going to the school where the students are going to be doing their volunteering. The taxi drivers didn't really seem to want to take us there because it's a little ways outside of town. I think their concern was they weren't going to be able to get a fare to come back into town. But the students had a really good idea. They wanted to be like a big brother or a big sister, kind of mentor these impoverished, country, local people in a very rural village with the hopes to, I think, inspire them, work hard, do well in school, and try to get a proper education so that they could get out of this rural villages. I will say, I don't know how much benefit the volunteer program really had. I mean, it was nice that the, rural kids, the village kids got to meet with some city kids. And I think it was, in my opinion, from what I saw, because there wasn't a whole lot of curriculum, or it was just kind of like, hey, I'm here, let's just hang out, let's walk around, let's do stuff. I feel like it was more of like for the city kids to pat themselves on the back and say, hey, we did some volunteer work in the village, yay. So once we meet all the kids and we're at the school, we break up and we go to our individual kids' families' houses. So we get to the family house and it's this massive house. I mean, 8, 10 bedrooms, 3 stories tall. It's just huge. However, it's completely unfinished. Concrete floors, concrete walls, no ceilings, no appliances, no toilets, no nothing. It's basically just like a couch in the living room, like a very basic wok and a gas burner in the kitchen, a big barrel bucket of water, and a couple wooden chairs that they had made. And then half of their house was used as like a storing for fruits and vegetables, like a slaughterhouse. I was surprised at the size of the house, but what surprised me even more was just like how unfinished it was. And I think that's very common for the village people. They get the money to build the house, and then they save, and they get the money to finish off the master bedroom or the kitchen or the living room. And they do like one little bit at a time until the house is completely finished. However, that time frame from when they start to when they finish could be 20 years. And over that 20-year time period, the house is probably falling apart at this point because construction in China is pretty shoddy. And so by the time they finish it, the house is falling apart. So anyway, I wasn't too concerned about the house itself. I was told I was going to have my own bedroom. I was like, great, it's a huge house. Turns out I ended up having to share a bed with the 15-year-old, 16-year-old male high school student that was the big brother for the kid. And it was a little bit awkward. My Chinese is pretty terrible. And so it was a little awkward with like the little kid and the family because like I really couldn't communicate with them. I could ask them a couple basic questions. I could understand a little bit like, are you hungry? Do you want some water? Do you want to go to the bathroom? Do you need to take a shower? Like, hey, some of that stuff. Have you eaten? Are you tired? Whatever. But it was, again, basic communication. That's about all I'll say about the village. It was fun. It was a nice experience for a couple days. I was having to use the restroom in like a hole in an outhouse in the back of the house and take baths in like a little bucket. Again, not a big deal, but I was ready to leave when it was time to go. So once I concluded my last meal and kind of day with the village people and the high school students, I said goodbye to everyone, and I jumped in a taxi I jumped in a bus and took the bus into the city. And I can tell you what, I was so excited to get out of there. I was ready for a hot shower and a proper toilet. And I had called my friend, Oliver, to come meet me in Zhangjiajie because he wasn't doing anything. Flights are cheap. I was like, come meet me. Let's go do the fun stuff in Zhangjiajie. Let's go hiking. Let's go see the Avatar Mountains. Let's explore. Let's get drunk. Let's do the fun stuff. let's do the fun stuff that adults do that aren't, doesn't involve children. And so anyway, I met up with Oliver. We explored the city that night, and the next day we ended up going into the Zhangjiajie Park. Now, remember when I said it's 35 degrees Celsius, 38 degrees Celsius, 105, 110 degrees Fahrenheit? It's hot. We get up into the mountains, oh, it becomes so nice. It's so cool. The air is crisp, it's fresh. And we check into a hotel. They let us check in. It's two queen beds and one big room, Chinese style squat toilet. But the front view has a balcony on the third floor, and we were looking out over the most picturesque Avatar, Zhangjiajie Mountains. This place is world famous. It's the inspiration for the movie Avatar. So anyway, we check in, we change clothes, we head straight to the park for a day of hiking. And even though we were much higher up, it was still a pretty arduous day. It was still pretty hot in the sun. The humidity was still really high. So we end up, we're sweating, we're exhausted, we're hiking up and down the mountains. We start off with this lower trail that goes through the valley. We go about halfway down this trail, which is about 3 or 4 kilometers. Then we hike up the mountains to get this beautiful view from the top. But once we get to the top, we realize, wow, where did all these people come from? They had taken cable cars to the top, and they just came straight to the top to take photos. Chinese thing is just, hey, we were here, see this photo? It proves we were here, bye, let's go somewhere else. They don't actually really enjoy it. It's just a matter of validating that, look, I was here. I want some recognition on my social media feed. I want everyone to know I came here, I did this. Did I enjoy it? That's not important. I was here. So we get up there, we are just having a blast. It's so beautiful. But the further and further we trek, the more and more Chinese people we start running into until it becomes a mob. I mean, an absolute mob. But we got to see some really cool sights that first day. There's a rock bridge, a natural rock bridge that people have actually wingsuited through. You see some just things that blow your mind. The way the mountains look, they just don't look real. They look like something out of a movie. So anyway, we end up following the rest of the mountaintop. We go down this elevator thinking that this will take us back to the bottom to some buses that we can take back to where we are. Now, if you don't know anything about traveling around China, let me be the first one to tell you that maps in China, like physical printed maps or maps that you find at a park, they're absolutely useless. They will show you a little section of the park and say, you are here, but with no reference as to where you are in the grand scheme of the park. So it's like, you're here. That's great. I know, I'm here. Where is here in reference to everything else? They're terrible, terrible maps. I don't know what it is. And Chinese people really can't use maps in general. I have a map of China behind me. I have brought tons of Chinese people over here and be like, where are you from? And they're like, I'm like, where is, Hong Kong? And they're like, and I'm like, come on, seriously? Hong Kong, right there. I can look at the map in 1 second and know exactly where it is. Anyway, we come down this big glass elevator to this really cool platform area. We hike down some steps. We get to some buses. And then we realize by looking at the overall map that we had purchased at the beginning that we are on the far side of the park now. And there's no way back except for to walk back through the park. And it's starting to get sunset and we're like, So we stop, we get some food, we get some beer, and we're like, all right, well, if we have no choice, I guess we just walk back through. So luckily there was a bottom trail that went through the valley. It was the same trail that we had taken part of earlier. It said it was about 6 or 7 kilometers, and it was, 20 minutes from sunset, and we're like, oh, great. So we just start walking as fast as we can. Luckily, it's a flat trail, paved the whole way, just runs through, follows some streams and some bridges, and the whole time you're looking up. It was so beautiful to do that trail at sunset. However, by the end of it, it's fully dark, and we are now hiking in the dark through this trail. We ended up coming across some, a mother and a daughter who were finishing up the trail at night as well. And I'm pretty sure we scared the shit out of them because we just kind of snuck up out of the dark behind them and they were like, ah! But they thanked us at the end because we were there to walk with them to the end of the trail. When we finally get out, we're back at this little touristy village at the end of the trail, the beginning of the park, and we're very close to our hotel. We stop, we get some food, and we just go to town. We order this Hongxiaoyu, which is like a braised fish and brown sauce. We get some sort of like Hunan fried pork dish, a fried beef dish, some vegetables. We went crazy. We end up going back to our hotel, get a few beers, go back to the hotel, take showers. I took a shower. My friend Oliver, for some reason, just decided to drink a beer and go to sleep. Let that be a warning to you. If you've hiked all day and you're hot and sweaty and then you don't take a shower and go to sleep, it can cause some sort of chafage or rashes. So the next day, Oliver woke up and he couldn't walk. He couldn't walk at all. He was like, I'm so chafed, I'm so sore, I can't walk. And I was like, come on, man. So the second day, I did a lot of hiking by myself. We did a little bit. He came into the park for a little bit, went up some stairs, saw some viewpoints. I basically did most of the hiking. And then late afternoon, we decided to just get day drunk. So we did that. And then took a nap back at the hotel. And then we went for like a late evening hike again on that same trail. Now, a couple tips I will say. Don't go visit Zhangjiajie in the summertime. It's too hot. Do it in early spring. Do it in early fall. Bring lots of water. If you need sunscreen for your sensitive skin, bring sunscreen. Even though you're in the mountains, you're still going to need some sunscreen. I didn't really have a problem with bugs, but mosquitoes don't really like me, so maybe a good idea as well. Bring plenty of water, plenty of snacks. There's not a whole lot in the park. There are some places you can find some snacks and some food. Still better to be prepared. Bring good shoes, and definitely bring some socks or underwear that wick. Because if you're sweating a whole bunch, again, my buddy Oliver couldn't hack it, didn't take a shower, ended up with a really bad rash, and wasn't really able to enjoy the park as well as he should have. We were there for 2.5 days. We ended up going back down to the city for the last day and night. So we went back to the city, hung out, explored the city, went to some museums, checked out what the city of Zhangjiajie has to offer. Not really a whole lot, to be honest. We did try some more, good street food, Hunan street food. We got really lucky, and we did book a hostel. And something that does work in China is Hostel World or Hostel Bookers. You can find places on those, although you can't always communicate with the staff. If you send messages, they can copy and paste in Google Translate. You can't really call them. But we did get very lucky. The hostel that we stayed at had a rooftop patio, and it provided this beautiful views of the mountains with the sun setting and this giant pagoda in the background. And like I said, we did explore Zhangjiajie, the city. We did see a couple big pagodas and some statues and a couple parks that were cool. But again, it was just so miserably hot. Now it gets hot in Hong Kong. It gets hot in Shenzhen. It's hot by the coast, but it's just not that hot because you have those ocean breezes. You have the coastal breeze that keeps things a little bit cooler. In the mountains and in the central part of China, it's miserably hot. So bring lots of water. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this short video about my experience in Zhangjiajie. If you have any questions or comments about this trip, if you want some advice on this trip, please leave a comment. I'm happy to reply and give you as much information as I can. As always, please like, subscribe, share these videos if you want. And again, please comment because your comments, your feedback is great. We love it. It helps me and it helps Wes and I create better videos. So thanks for watching, and